This is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, whatever the sport, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com is here. And some Eagles news today. They did a little bookkeeping, little signage. They brought back Avonte Maddox on a one-year deal. They also restructured the contract, or I should say gave an extension to Jordan Mailata, and he got some big money. We'll talk about that, some draft stuff, and more with my friend Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com. I was watching him this morning. You were on my television for an hour this morning, my friend. How are you?
My apologies. No, thanks for checking it out. I appreciate it, Mike.
You had a nice hoodie on today. I was like, yeah, I'm liking that hoodie you were rocking this morning. So let's get into some of the things, because obviously at that time you weren't talking about that, and all of a sudden here we are, 4 o'clock for Football at 4. Avonte Maddox is back. So let's start with that, because that happened first. One-year deal. He was almost a forgotten man. They released him back in March. He met with the Saints, and now he's back. I mean, very interesting move. It was almost like they looked around, didn't see anybody, and just decided to dance with the devil they knew.
Yeah, the longer he lasted out there, Mike, and I've mentioned this, Adam and Jeff have mentioned this on the podcast, I'm sure you have as well, it seemed likely that the Eagles and Avonte were going to be reuniting, and that was sort of the terms, if you remember, when they parted ways with him, that a reunion could be in the cards, and sure enough it was. The Eagles really don't have a bona fide slot corner on their roster. Now, they have names, and they have guys that can vie for that, but they don't have someone who's done it at a high level, which Avonte Maddox has. Now, he's not going to be assured anything, right? He has to ensure that he stays healthy, and he has to overcome some hurdles here. And it's a modest contract, I assume, and we'll have to see how it goes. I still don't think that's going to deter the Eagles from drafting, let's say, a inside corner or someone that has inside versatility in the draft or anything like that. Competition brings out the best in everyone, and they obviously have a familiar face in Avonte Maddox that they know can do it.
What does this do? Who's in this room now? This is another, who's in competition for that slot spot? Because we have a lot of corners in this room, but who is a slot corner that Avonte Maddox, I guess he would be at the top of that depth chart right now. Who is in competition for that spot that's here currently?
Tyler Hall, who they just signed away from the Raiders, and he's played just briefly. He's been a sparsely contributing player for that back end. And then you have Zach McPherson, who's coming off an Achilles injury, of course. You have Mario Goodrich, who, after he went against Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, the Eagles somehow decided that he couldn't play, and they put him on the practice squad. And then you have the draft to look to, which I think that – and Isaiah Rodgers. I don't want to forget Isaiah Rodgers. For some reason, there's a lot of folks that are putting all their eggs in the Isaiah Rodgers basket, and it's just someone who hasn't played football in a year. So I like to urge people to take precaution when you're sort of putting these expectations, sometimes unrealistic expectations, on a young player. And he also hasn't played much slot. He has the body type that suggests that he should be able to, but he's been predominantly an outside corner with the Colts. Obviously, they had Kenny Moore, but he's going to be in the mix as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many guys that have been kind of filtering through here, and we were talking about this earlier. You know, you've got your Kaylee Ringos, your Eli Ricks, your Mekhi Gardners. I mean, they just seem like they've been throwing darts at the wall trying to find somebody. Do you think they will go down that road in the draft again, like fourth round, third? They don't have a third, but like a fourth round, fifth round, and keep adding guys? Or do they like these young guys that they're saying, you know what, we don't need to go get deeper round outside corner or inside corner guys?
Yeah, the name I want to spotlight here is Max Melton, the Rutgers corner, who's going to go in the second round, sort of right around where the Eagles are picking at either 50 or 53, has inside-outside versatility, completely blew the doors off the combine, looked extremely fluid and technical in his on-field position work at the Rutgers Pro Day, which I was at. Christian Parker, the Eagles defensive backs coach, was right there, had some eyes on him, was one of the coaches that put him through his workout, and I think he's a day one nickel guy. They have a lot of names there, but he's somebody that can be a building block for the future, and he can also play on the outside, really good ball skills. There's a lot to like with Max, and he's somebody that's really risen throughout the process. There's few players in this class, at least defensively, that have helped themselves more than Max Melton has.
Of course, his brother Bo is with the Packers, had that touchdown catch. Max went to Cedar Creek, about 20 minutes from our studios here, so that's a cool name to hear. And I was going to ask you about Max. Is that 50, 53, somewhere in that range? Does that jive?
Yeah, he's a top 50 player in my book, and he has been throughout the process. So there may even be some teams that like him even more and they may take him a little bit earlier than that. But top end of the second, kind of right around where the Eagles are picking at 50 is where I have him slotted right now.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, here on the Sports Bash Live. So Avonte Maddox is back. Now, if he's healthy, he's the starter, right? I mean, he's very good when he plays. The problem is he can't stay on the field.
Yeah, or he can be somebody who contributes in sub packages if you draft a young player and you like what he can bring as far as versatility and different types of skill set. Maddox can play safety, he can play nickel, but yeah, barring something unforeseen like taking a corner early in the draft that can play nickel,
right?
Yeah, Maddox is going to be the guy.
All right, so that's the first move. Avonte Maddox, he is back. He gets a 1-year deal. So kind of a low risk, high reward. I mean, small deal. Hey, if he comes back and plays, we've got our guy. We know that they like him. See if he can be healthy. Today, they go out and give a massive deal to Jordan Mailata. I mean, this thing came out of nowhere where they give another big-time deal to Jordan Mailata. He gets a 3-year, $66 million extension with $48 million in guaranteed and a $20 million signing bonus. He is the 4th highest paid tackle in all of football. It's a tremendous story, unbelievable ride. But were you surprised that this happened on a random April day?
No, his deal was coming up, and the Eagles obviously committed to Landon Dickerson earlier in the offseason, right around free agency. And then Jordan Mailata gets a 3-year, $66 million contract extension, and he's going to be paid $22 million a year on average, which you outlined. The Eagles have that left side of the line locked up with Dickerson and Mailata, and they play off each other so well. They're really tight, and the Eagles. And when you look at the Hassan Reddick, sort of when he was jettisoned to the Jets, you have to keep in mind that you can't pay everybody, and certain things like a Landon Dickerson extension, like a Jordan Mailata extension, potentially Devontae Smith down the line, and some of the free agents, you're not able to do these type of things if you're doling out significant chunk of change for Hassan Reddick, who's approaching 30 years old. So it's sort of a give or take. I love what the Eagles did there, getting a homegrown building block, left tackle, and Jordan Mailata in place for the next 5 years with Landon Dickerson. How could you not like it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Mailata is a great story, and he's been a very good player as well. I mean, he signed that deal a couple of years ago, and I know it looked like, hey, this guy really hasn't proven anything, but Roseman identifies players and tries to sign them early, and it seems like he's played this whole thing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's par for the course with Howie Roseman. He did something to a much lesser degree earlier this week with Reed Blankenship, getting ahead of that and eliminating the restricted free agent route and playing that game. So they're a very forward-thinking franchise in many regards, and this is just one of the many examples of the Eagles sort of being progressive and trying to get ahead of things before it potentially becomes an issue.
Yeah, I mean, now as you mentioned, they got that left side of the line locked up. Give us some thoughts on some avenues for that right guard spot. Is that an in-house? Are you saying 22? That's the most likely spot to fix right guard. Where are we at right now with that right guard? Because that seems to be the one hole left on this offense that definitively doesn't have an answer.
Well, first and foremost, I would say that, I've always been a proponent in letting young players play, give them time to develop, work through some of the growing pains, and take their lumps. The same should go for Tyler Steen, who obviously didn't look very good in the Dallas game. That's why they went back to Sua Opeta. If they saw anything with Tyler Steen, they would have put him back out there and allowed him the room to make some errors and grow. But if you have the chance, if you're the Eagles, and you have a chance to significantly upgrade at that position and get a slam dunk, whether it be, and you never want to take a guard in the first round, a pure guard. That would be malpractice. But in the second round, like a Cooper Beebe, and he's a plug-and-play guy. He's ready. He has pro-level ability, and he's very refined for the position right now versus Steen, who was really a tackle forced to play guard. I think you have to do it and don't think twice about it. Let him battle it out in camp and look at best player win.
The kid from Washington, Tufunga. What do you 20 at 22? If he's on the board there, is that a guy that you think the Eagles would jump at?
You mean Troy Faltano?
There you go. Sorry, my bad. What did I
He
say?
played left tackle. He played left tackle for them, and I project him as a guard. He's 6'4", 315, supremely athletic. Had a really good pre-draft cycle. Maybe priced himself out of the Eagles' range, if you know what I mean, through testing and just checking off a ton of boxes. But I like him a lot, Mike. I think if he's within striking distance, if you're the Eagles, maybe you look at him as a Lane Johnson replacement down the road and a plug-and-play guy at guard, and you maybe trade up to get him a couple picks. But, yeah, there's a lot to like with him.
I think I combined his first name and his last name together, just completely blanked out. But, yeah, he's a very versatile offensive line guy. You mentioned tackle, can probably play any of the 5 positions on the line if you needed him to. Figure that, 22 at that right guard spot, if you can get a guy that can do multiple things. You also take a look at your mock draft last week. We talked about corner seems to be the one spot. Does that change at all by bringing back Maddox, or is that something they still need to focus on this offseason?
Yeah, it doesn't change at all. The Maddox signing doesn't move the needle. The Eagles still need to get younger at that position alongside Keely Ringo and some of the pieces that they have. But if you have an opportunity to draft a Nate Wiggins at 22, let's say, an Ennis Rakestraw, let's say you look in the second round and you have a Max Melton or a Kalen Carson from Wake Forest or a Cooper DeJean in the first round, you have to do it. And you have to get better at this position. You have to start developing your talent and getting younger there. They have 2 aging corners. That's a position that needs to be addressed early on day 1 or day 2.
All right. Last week on Friday, right after we talked to you on Thursday, Andrew, the Eagles traded Hassan Reddick away. We kind of thought that was happening, but they end up trading for a third-round pick in 2026 that could be a second-round pick in 2026. So 2 years down the road, I guess we're not surprised at Reddick, but what did you think of the return on that deal?
Well, I think it's hardly a slam dunk that he's going to meet the threshold of the playing time, given they have Jermaine Johnson, you have John Franklin Myers, and they like to rotate their linemen. I don't think the double-digit sacks will be an issue, but I don't know that you're going to see that second-round pick. Now, that was what they were able to get for an aging pass rusher who is not going to be a schematic fit for every team. So, and the fact that it was a couple drafts away isn't necessarily something that I raise my eyebrows at, Mike, because Howie has proven, you look at pick number 50 this year, that was from the 2022 draft in a trade with the Saints where they got 5 picks out of that. So the Eagles are always looking to wheel and deal and find ways to maximize their picks and put them in the best position. So this was the best offer on the table. And if you look where the Jets are standing, potentially 3 years down the line, 2 years down the line, they could be losing Aaron Rodgers, and they could be a dumpster fire by that point, and the Eagles could have a pretty favorable pick. So, I mean, look, are you a better team with Hassan Reddick? Absolutely. But I think given what the Eagles have done this offseason, they've prioritized younger players, and that's really been their focus.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to argue it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the question. Are they a better team without Reddick? And that's debatable. I think you look at Huff, a lot is on his shoulders now. So with Bryce Huff here, Josh Sweat back, and kind of what you have with Reddick gone, is edge rusher something that you want to see them address?
Yeah, definitely. And the reason why I say that is Huff, as we've outlined, hasn't played more than 50% of the snaps in his career. So there's the great unknown there. There's also a great unknown with Nolan Smith, who to me is the X factor, who could not get onto the field despite Hassan and Josh Sweat logging a ton of snaps and being clearly drained and ineffective late in the season. They were clamoring for someone to step up and be able to jump into the rotation and alleviate some of that pressure, and he still couldn't do it. Brandon Graham is also getting up there in age. And by the way, next season you only have Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith assured under contract for the following season. So you want to get it. You talk about the Eagles being ahead of the curve and prioritizing the trenches. Well, this sort of sets that up.
At this particular draft, are there edge rushers that you would like in that spot, 22?
Latu from UCLA, and I understand he's a polarizing player for some, given the injury history and all that, but he's the best pure pass rusher in the draft, and that's not really – I mean, that's my opinion, and the opinion of many that also share that. So, I mean, there's a lot to like, and he wouldn't be forced to step right in and be the guy right away. He'd be able to work into a rotation, refine some of his skills. And by the way, he's pretty pro-ready by comparison to someone like a Chop Robinson, let's say, who's also going to fall right around that slot at 22. But I think that he could – you look at a nucleus potentially in the future with Latu, Nolan Smith, and Huff, and you really have something to work with there.
All right, a lot of draft stuff coming up. We're getting close now. We're obviously getting ready for the draft party. We'll have details on that coming up. You can win a trip to go see the Eagles play the Ravens in Baltimore. We'll have details on that in just a few minutes. But don't forget the Inside the Birds podcast and follow Andrew's stuff over at InsideTheBirds.com. He has 5 edge rushers that he likes. Post it there now. You can check that out on the website, InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, good talk, man.
Always, man. Talk soon.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, everybody.